I remember the exact moment I got down on one knee. The sunset painted the Malibu shoreline in shades of gold and pink, and Meredith stood there with tears streaming down her face. She said yes, and I thought that was the happiest day of my life. I had saved for 2 years just for that ring, planning every single detail. But some things money cannot buy, and some words cost more than any diamond ever could. 6 months later, I discovered I had invested everything in someone who never saw me as enough. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Trust me, you will want to stay for this one. This is the story of how I learned my true worth. My name is Rex. I am 32 years old and I work as a software engineer at a tech company in San Diego. I grew up in a small town outside of Columbus, Ohio. My father spent 30 years as an electrician, and my mother worked night shifts as a nurse at the local hospital. We were not rich, but we never went hungry. My parents taught me the value of hard work, honesty, and treating people with respect regardless of their bank account. I moved to California after college, chasing better opportunities in the tech industry. By the time I turned 30, I had paid off every dollar of my student loans. I was proud of that. I earned around $120,000 a year, owned a decent apartment with a view of the harbor, and drove a car that was almost paid off. Nothing flashy, but stable, comfortable. I thought I was doing well for myself. Then I met Meredith. It happened at an art gallery opening in downtown San Diego. A friend dragged me there, said it would be good for networking. I was standing in front of some abstract painting, pretending to understand it, when I heard her laugh. It was the kind of laugh that made you want to know what was so funny. I turned around and saw her, tall blonde, dressed in something that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. She worked in marketing for a luxury fashion brand, and everything about her screamed confidence. We talked for 2 hours that night. She was sharp, ambitious, and had opinions about everything. I found myself wanting to impress her. On our first date, I took her to a nice Italian restaurant I had researched for days. She smiled politely and said the food was fine, but she knew a better place we could try next time. On our second date, I chose a rooftop bar with city views. She mentioned that her friend's brother owned a club that was much more exclusive. I told myself she just had refined taste. She was used to nice things, that was not a crime. So I tried harder. Better restaurants, more thoughtful gifts. I wanted to show her I could keep up. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern forming. But when you are falling for someone, you make excuses. You fill in the gaps with hope instead of reality. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. During that time, I got used to her little comments. The way she would glance at her phone when I talked about my work. The slight disappointment when I suggested staying in instead of going out. The way she always seemed to be looking for something better, something more. But she stayed with me, so I assumed I was doing enough. I saved for 2 years to buy her ring. $15,000. A princess-cut diamond that sparkled like crazy under any light. The night I proposed on that beach in Malibu, I felt like I was giving her my whole heart wrapped up in that little box. She said yes. She cried. She hugged me tight. But the first thing she asked before we even left the beach was how many carats the diamond was. I laughed it off. I told myself she was just excited, just curious. Brides care about these things. 2 weeks later, we started planning the wedding, and that was when everything began to unravel. Meredith wanted the wedding at a resort in Napa Valley. Not just any resort, the resort. The one where celebrities got married, where a single night cost more than some people make in a month. When she showed me the estimate, I nearly choked. $80,000, just for the venue and basic catering. I suggested an alternative. A beautiful vineyard about 30 minutes away, still gorgeous, still elegant, but around $40,000 total. I thought it was a reasonable compromise. Meredith looked at me like I had suggested we get married at a fast food restaurant. She said she did not want her wedding to look cheap. She said her family and friends would be there, and she could not have them thinking she had downgraded. I asked her what she meant by downgraded, and she just shook her head and said, I would not understand. I gave in. I always gave in. We booked Napa Valley. We booked Napa. Meeting Meredith's family should have been my wake-up call, but I was too deep in denial to see it clearly. Her father, Gerald, owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across Southern California. The man had a handshake like a vice grip and a way of looking at you that made you feel like he was appraising your net worth. Her mother, Diane, had never worked a day in her life. She spent her time between the country club charity galas and complaining about the help. Meredith's younger brother, Preston, worked for their father and drove a Porsche that probably cost more than my entire apartment. The first time I had dinner at their house in La Jolla, I wore my best suit and brought an expensive bottle of wine. Their home sat on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The dining room alone was bigger than my entire living space. Gerald asked me about my job within the first 5 minutes. When I explained that I was a software engineer, he nodded slowly the way you might nod when someone tells you they collect stamps. Just a tech guy, he said to no one in particular. That is a stable field, I suppose. Diane asked about my family. When I mentioned that my father was an electrician and my mother was a nurse, she smiled tightly and immediately changed the subject to the upcoming golf tournament at their club. Preston could not resist making a joke. So I guess my sister is going to have to learn how to budget now, he said with a smirk. Welcome to the real world, Meredith. I waited for Meredith to say something, to defend me, to tell her brother to knock it off. Instead, she just laughed nervously and took another sip of wine. That night, driving back to San Diego, I asked her if she was okay with how her family treated me. She told me I was being too sensitive, that they were just joking around, that her family took time to warm up to new people. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. The wedding planning continued, and with each passing week, I felt more like an ATM than a groom. Meredith hired a wedding planner. Not just any planner, but the most expensive one in San Diego. $12,000 just for coordination fees. When I questioned whether we really needed someone that pricey, Meredith snapped at me. Do you want our wedding to look like a backyard barbecue? Is that what you want? Rex, I shut up and wrote the check. Then came the guest list. Meredith invited 200 people. Business associates of her father, friends from her sorority, colleagues from work. People she had not spoken to in years but needed to impress. When I asked if I could add 20 more people from my side, including my college roommates and some family friends from Ohio, she frowned. The venue has a capacity limit, she said. We cannot just add people randomly. I looked at the list. 170 of the 200 guests were her people. I had 30 spots. I did not push it. When we discussed music, I made one request. My buddy Eric had a band. They were talented, played at weddings all the time, and I thought it would be meaningful to have a friend involved. Meredith shot it down immediately. I am not having some amateur band at my wedding, she said. This is not open for discussion. My friend Marcus finally said what I was too afraid to admit to myself. We were having beers at my apartment going over the wedding expenses I had been tracking on a spreadsheet. The total had climbed to $95,000. I had personally contributed $70,000 from my savings. Gerald's generous contribution was $25,000, which he announced at a family dinner like he was donating to charity. Marcus looked at the numbers and then looked at me. Brother, he said, her family has more money than you will ever see. Why are you paying for almost everything? I mumbled something about wanting to contribute, about being a man, about taking responsibility. Marcus shook his head. Let me ask you something. Does she love you? Or does she love that you will do anything to make her happy? I told him he was wrong, that Meredith loved me in her own way, that relationships required sacrifice. But his words stayed with me. They kept me up at night. The engagement party was held at the country club her parents belonged to. Crystal chandeliers, waiters in white gloves, an open bar with top-shelf everything. I wore a new suit I could barely afford and tried my best to mingle with people who looked right through me. Halfway through the evening, I went looking for Meredith. I found her near the terrace talking with two of her friends. I was about to approach when I heard my name. So what does Rex actually do? One of them asked. Meredith sighed. He works in IT or something. Oh. The friend sounded disappointed. So, not finance or law. Number Meredith's voice carried a strange tone. But he is stable. The way she said it, stable. Like it was the best excuse she could come up with. Like I was a safe choice, not a proud one. I stood there frozen watching my fiancée apologize for me to her friends. I did not confront her that night. I swallowed the pain, told myself I was overthinking, and drank until the hurt went numb. 2 weeks before the wedding, everything exploded. Gerald had arranged a dinner with an important business partner named Harrison. It was supposed to be a chance for Harrison to meet the family, including the soon-to-be son-in-law. I put on my best smile and tried to make small talk about cars and investments topics I knew nothing about. Halfway through the meal, Harrison turned to Meredith with a warm smile. "Congratulations on the upcoming wedding," he said. "You must be so happy to be called Rex's future wife soon." Meredith set down her wine glass. Something flickered across her face. Then she laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. Honestly, she said, being called someone's future wife makes me feel like I am settling for less. I always thought I would end up with someone more established. The table went silent. Harrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. Gerald let out a nervous chuckle like his daughter had just told an awkward joke. Diane studied her napkin like it contained the secrets of the universe. And me, I sat there feeling like someone had punched me in the chest and forgotten to pull their fist back out. Meredith did not look at me. She picked up her wine glass and continued chatting with Harrison like she had not just gutted me in front of everyone. The drive home was silent. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Finally, Meredith sighed. "What is wrong with you?" "You have been quiet all night." I could not believe what I was hearing. "You just told a complete stranger that marrying me is settling for less," I said. "You said it right in front of me." She rolled her eyes. "You are overreacting. I was just making conversation. It was not a big deal." Not a big deal. 2 years together. $70,000 of my savings. Countless moments of being dismissed, diminished, and made to feel inadequate. And none of it was a big deal. Something shifted inside me that night. For the first time, I stopped making excuses. I stopped trying to see things from her perspective. I finally allowed myself to see the truth. This was not a one-time comment. This was a pattern. Meredith had been telling me who she was the entire time. I just refused to listen. I could not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table staring at spreadsheets and receipts, adding up everything I had invested in this relationship. Not just money, but time, energy, self-respect. The numbers were devastating. I realized I had spent 2 years trying to prove my worth to someone who would never see it. Someone who measured value in bank accounts and job titles and social status. No matter how hard I worked, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be enough for her. Because she was not looking for a partner. She was looking for a trophy. That night, I made a decision. The next morning, I started making phone calls. Day 1. I called the venue in Napa Valley and canceled the reservation. They kept the $15,000 deposit. I told them that was fine. Then I called the wedding planner and terminated our contract. I called the caterer, the florist, the photographer, and the band Meredith had insisted on. Every single vendor. Canceled. Day 2. I went through our shared calendar and removed myself from everything. The wedding of Meredith's college friend we were supposed to attend together. The company holiday party she wanted us to make an appearance at. The honeymoon trip to Santorini I'd already booked and paid for. Canceled. All of it. I went back to my apartment and packed up every single item Meredith had left there over the past 2 years. Her clothes, her toiletries, her books, her ridiculous decorative pillows. I folded everything neatly, placed it all in boxes, and stacked them by the door. Day 3. I sat down and wrote a letter. I did not make it long. I did not make it dramatic. I simply told the truth. I wrote about the $70,000 I had contributed to a wedding that was never really about us. I wrote about the 2 years I spent trying to earn a place in her world while she apologized for my existence. I wrote about hearing her tell a stranger that marrying me was settling for less. And I ended with this: "You said marrying me was settling for less. I am giving you the freedom to find more. Good luck." I placed the letter in an envelope along with copies of every receipt and invoice I had paid. Then I took off the expensive watch she had given me for my birthday, the one that now felt like a chain rather than a gift. I added the engagement ring to the envelope, the $15,000 ring I had saved 2 years for. I sealed it all up and waited. Meredith showed up at my apartment that evening. She had discovered that the venue was canceled, that the vendors were not responding to her calls, that our honeymoon reservation had vanished. She pounded on my door until I opened it. "What did you do?" she screamed. "Do you have any idea how many people are expecting this wedding? Do you know how embarrassing this is?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I did not feel the need to apologize or explain or fix things. "How many people?" I asked calmly. "The 200 guests on your side, your father's business partners." I looked at the guest list, Meredith. I could not even find room for my college friends. She switched tactics immediately. The anger melted into tears. She grabbed my arm and told me she did not mean what she said, that she loved me, that we could work this out. I handed her the envelope. "You told me I was settling for less," I said. "So here is less. No more money from me. No more effort from me. No more putting up with being treated like I am not good enough. This is what less looks like without me." She opened the envelope. She saw the letter, the receipts, the ring. For the first time since I had known her, Meredith had nothing to say. I stepped back and closed the door. The first few weeks were hard. Not because I missed Meredith, but because I had to face what I had allowed myself to become. I had spent 2 years shrinking myself to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. I had ignored every red flag, rationalized every insult, and sacrificed my self-respect on the altar of a relationship that was never going to fulfill me. That realization hurt more than any breakup. I had trouble sleeping. I questioned my decision over and over. I wondered if I had been too harsh, too impulsive, too proud. Then my father called. He did not say much. That was not his style. But what he did say stayed with me. "You did the right thing, son. Never let anyone make you feel like you are not good enough. Your worth does not depend on their approval." My dad, the electrician from Ohio, the man who worked with his hands his whole life, who never made six figures, who never owned a fancy car or a beachfront house. And yet he understood something Meredith and her entire family never would. True value cannot be measured in dollars. Slowly, I started putting myself back together. I reconnected with Marcus and my other friends, the ones I had neglected while trying to keep up with Meredith's social calendar. We had barbecues at my apartment, watched football on Sundays, played poker on Friday nights. Simple stuff, real stuff. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned. Running along the harbor at sunrise. Playing guitar in the evenings. Cooking actual meals instead of ordering takeout because Meredith never liked my cooking anyway. I looked at my savings account $70,000 lighter and realized the money was gone, but the lesson was priceless. A month after the breakup, I got promoted at work. Lead engineer on a major project. My boss said I had been doing great work lately, that I seemed more focused, more present. I did not tell him it was because I finally had the mental space to actually think. Around the same time, I started noticing a coworker named Sophie. She worked in a different department, but we always crossed paths in the break room. She had been asking about me for months, apparently. How was I doing? If I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I had been too distracted with Meredith to pay attention. We started having lunch together, nothing romantic, just conversation. Real conversation. She asked about my family, my interests, my dreams. She listened when I talked about my dad, the electrician, and my mom, the nurse. She did not change the subject or look for the exit. It felt different. It felt like being seen instead of evaluated. 3 months after I ended things with Meredith, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was already dating someone new, the son of one of her father's business partners. wealthy family, Ivy League education, exactly the type of established man she always wanted. When I heard the news, I waited for the pain to hit, the jealousy, the regret. Nothing came. I realized my indifference was not bitterness. It was freedom. She was no longer my concern. Her choices, her standards, her endless pursuit of more. None of it had anything to do with me anymore. I thought a lot about what settling for less really means. Meredith thought she was settling for less by being with me, but the truth is, I was the one who settled. I settled for someone who did not respect me. I settled for someone who saw my background as a flaw and my career as mediocre. I settled for crumbs of appreciation when I deserved a full plate. Your worth is not determined by how much money you make or what family you come from or what car you drive. Your worth is determined by how you treat yourself and the people around you. It is measured in integrity, kindness, and the courage to walk away from situations that diminish you. I stood on my balcony the other night looking out at the San Diego harbor. The city lights reflected off the water. The air smelled like salt and possibility. I do not know what the future holds. Maybe things will work out with Sophie. Maybe they will not. Maybe I will meet someone else entirely, or maybe I will spend some time on my own figuring out who I am without trying to prove anything to anyone. But I know one thing for certain. I will never again let someone make me feel like I am less than I am. Sometimes the best thing a person can do for you is show you exactly who they are. And the best thing you can do for yourself is believe them the first time. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like you were not good enough, no matter how hard you tried? How did you find the strength to walk away? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who is going through the same thing right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, share this video with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we deserve better. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. I hope you never settle for less than you deserve. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.